Startup Boston Week. My name is Grace Walsh, and I'm going to be your host today. A huge thank you again to Suffolk University, Sawyer Business School for hosting this conference. They host a lot of great opportunities for learning both in and outside the classrooms, and we really appreciate their partnership in hosting the entirety of Startup Boston Week, both last year and this year. I also hear they have some pretty cool undergraduate students, just saying. The goal behind Startup Boston Week is to connect the entire greater Boston and New England startup community, all industries, startup departments, and all bootstrapped and funding stages for 5 lovely days of continuous learning and connecting with one another. The team that creates Startup Boston Week is primarily volunteer, so the folks working the conference today are volunteering their time as well. So if you see them, maybe give them a little thank you. It goes a long way. So thank you for attending this conference. It is a labor of love, and we appreciate you playing a part in shaping our startup community. Now, on to the panel.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and thank you, Startup Boston Week, for hosting today's panel. My name is Alyssa Stapper. I work at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where I lead commercialization for new products and services. Really excited about today's panel. We have a really diverse group of innovators here on the panel today, all from different organizations in the greater Boston area, and they're really excited to share their experience around what it takes to launch and manage a corporate innovation strategy. So I'll turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for braving the Friday's traffic. I thought the room would be empty, but we really appreciate everyone staying back. My name is Hemant Kaligotla. Definitely first want to thank Anam and Elisa for having us on the panel. It's also great to be with Carly and Adam on this panel. I work for a company called Lonza. It's the largest contract manufacturing organization in the world, and I'm part of the corporate innovation team. I've been with Lonza 3 years, and before Lonza, I started my career as a scientist commercializing therapies and drugs for Shire, which is Takeda now, then moved to the commercial side of business doing marketing, sales, and global business strategy. And I think I would say relatively new to corporate innovation, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Hi, everyone. Great to meet you all. Thanks for coming out and echoing Hemant's thank yous to the Startup Boston team for pulling this together. My name's Carly Jost. I am the community manager for Suffolk Technologies. We are the venture capital affiliate of Suffolk Construction. So if you've made your way down to South Station recently or over to the Fenway area, you might have seen some of the projects that Suffolk Construction works on. I like to say that Suffolk Technologies really sits at that intersection between innovation, founders, traditional venture capital, and the corporate world, and specifically the construction or AEC industry. We are an institutional venture capital firm, so we have outside investors or LPs. So not necessarily a true strategic corporate venture capital arm. That said, we really aim to bring the industry to founders, entrepreneurs who are looking to solve critical challenges in the construction industry. For those of you not familiar, construction is one of the few industries that has declined in productivity over the last couple of decades instead of, expanded, especially with the onset of technology. So it's a critical time for us to introduce technology. And in my role, I really focus on empowering entrepreneurs and helping them connect with the broader industry. So excited to be here, and have also been on the other side where I was leading sales and business development for early stage startups. So I've cut my teeth there. I've been in many of your shoes who are starting companies in terms of working with strategics. So happy to bring that perspective to this conversation as well.
Hey everybody, my name's Adam L'Italian. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Liberty Mutual, and I also lead our internal incubator called Solaria Labs. So our mission is really to develop and test new capabilities, features, products to better serve our customers, clients, partners, just do better, but also anticipate their future needs and get a head start on that. We do that in a hub model for the incubator, so we work across the company. We also have other levers, external levers, so we have academic partnerships to do sponsored research, and we also have a strategic venture fund that I partner closely with to engage the startup community. Prior to doing my work at Liberty, I spent about 15 years doing U.S. defense research and development. Just happy to be here to talk about corporate innovation and venture.
Great. So I mentioned before that we have a really diverse group of panelists, and so I wanted to start off by asking, how do you and your organization engage the startup community and other parts of the innovation ecosystem in order to help your organization succeed? And what does that engagement look like in terms of how you do it and the culture around it? Carly, if you could start us off.
Yeah, happy to start. For us, startups and entrepreneurs are really at the core of everything we do. Since we are an institutional venture capital firm, we are nothing without the entrepreneurs that we invest in or connect with along the way. So they are really the focal point for us. I think what's really interesting is we're seeing a big surgence in entrepreneurs who maybe developed or horizontal solutions, now looking to build more vertical SaaS solutions specifically for the construction industry because of the problems that I mentioned before around productivity and labor shortages. So it's a really exciting time. So they're really the focal point for Suffolk Technologies. We are not, as traditional and what you'll see with a lot of general contractors or folks in the AEC industry where I sit is there's not really traditional R&D or corporate innovation. It's a lot of leaning on entrepreneurs and founders to develop solutions because we don't really have budgets for internal R&D. So for us, the founders are the R&D, and a lot of what we do is bringing the industry to those founders because of that exact thing that I just mentioned. A lot of smaller general contractors or partners that we work with, or trade partners who don't have anyone focused on really the corporate side, other than maybe someone who runs payroll, and everyone's in the field. Is they look to us and look to the entrepreneurs that we work with for what is the pulse on innovation in the industry? How are things changing? How can I incorporate this into my business to be more efficient? So what we strive to do is really bring that industry to the founders. It's an extremely fragmented industry as well. I know that's not unique to construction or real estate or the built world. There's so many industries that are extremely fragmented with multiple stakeholders. So when you're a founder building a vertical solution for a specific industry, finding a true partner in someone with a strategic venture arm or a VC with deep domain expertise is so key in helping you navigate that. So I think for us, what corporate innovation or corporate venture means is really partnership and being able to work directly with the founders, pairing our domain expertise that we've gained through our affiliation with Suffolk Construction and other operating partners and trade partners that we work with their brilliant minds and what they're looking to solve, whether that's, they have a background in supply chain or SaaS or whatever it might be, and using that to really drive change across the industry.
Great. Adam, how about you? And if you could talk about some of the vehicles that you use when it comes to your work.
Yeah, so we think it's all about optionality. So I talked a little bit about the structure. We have an internal incubator. We founded that maybe 8+ years ago now. And it's to create that protected space so you're not competing against, core needs. You have the space, you have the protected funding, you have the room, you identify the focus areas, you say what disruptive forces are coming our way, what are the threats or opportunities that we want to defend against or capitalize on, and once you have that space internally, that's good, but you have to force yourself to continuously take an external perspective. So when we started that, we launched our strategic fund at the same time. We also started engaging our partners more in co-creation. We also started to engage academia more in sponsored research and development. So it's about having those different levers and then orchestrating them as a system that is very powerful. And when we think about the startup community, we engage in the same spaces that we engage with the incubator, with the sponsored research. So things for us like what does the future of mobility hold, climate, sustainability, looking at the industry of insurance, which is historically protection, so it's a financial risk transfer that you're purchasing, but how can we move that more to prevention to help people live safer lives, which is good for us, the industry, society, right? So when we engage the startup community, we look for people doing awesome things in those spaces, and the first order thing that we get from that is learning. It's been years now that everybody was gonna disrupt the insurance industry, and I think we embrace that. That type of disruption, that type of different thinking forces everybody to do better in the industry for our customers and clients. But we engage, we learn, and ever since we had the fund, it's rare that something comes up in the news or in our comp intel that we're not already plugged into and aware of because we're immersed in the community. We make the investments, but it's more than that. Like we make a commitment. So it's the financial investment, but we also bring our capabilities, our channels, our customers, the appropriate data to the startups because we want to make them successful. And some of the best things we've done is when we actually have in-housed our portfolio companies' products into the company to activate them and test them. We're helping them be stronger and better, and we're actually providing avenues to scale that can be very quick, right? And we get different exposure to new things. So it's this it is like truly the power of partnership. And for me, it's venture is part of it, but it's really the system. When you get the system running well, it can be extremely powerful. And that's the journey we've been on at Liberty.
Thank you. So just trying to build on what Carly and Adam has said. First of all, Lonza is in the biopharma space, and it's hard tech there. And we are a contract manufacturing organization, so we don't deal with any clinical assets. Our job is to build technology platforms for our customers, which enable manufacturing of some of these new and advanced therapies so that the clients like Genentech and the Amgens and the Biogens in the world, we could actually provide processes for them in a rapid fashion. With that said, our organization is split into three umbrellas. One is external partnering, and the entire objective, which I belong to, focus is identify strategic gaps in terms of technology platforms and bringing them, as well as developing new technology, which we might not be ready now, but at some point in the future. The other one is the licensing arm. I'm going to speak less of that because it's more looking towards late-stage TRLs, commercial-ready technologies, so we could in-license those technologies. And the last one is the CVC arm, which kind of invests into both the partnering and the licensing part. Talking about the external partnering, as I said, the focus is to fill the strategic gaps. We work with companies anywhere between TRL3 all the way to TRL9. Early-stage TRLs is innovation. As you go towards later-stage TRLs, you're very much doing operation and beta testing. With that in mind, the main ecosystems we work with right now are startups, of course, and academia. We work a lot with academia. And also another partner for us is suppliers. All the major suppliers in the world also play a big role because suppliers is always a transactional relationship, and we try to avoid that and make them partners in the ecosystem because they're all part of the ecosystem for technology to really get to commercial stage. And tools are very much the same, I would say, independent of the industry, sponsored research, joint collaboration agreements, rapid pilots to actually test feasibility, build to buy, and all the usual channels. M&A is our last option. If you feel like we have spent enough couple of years with the partners and we have established enough credibility and we think the team is strong enough, then eventually I think we kind of look at the M&A part. On the CVC's focus, we need to realize that the CVC within a large organization, our focus is more strategic than transactional. Our goal is to actually leverage or capture the value from the platform sometime in the future as a service, as well as building a pipeline of customers more than a financial transaction trying to get returns on it. It's always there, but we are more strategic in nature, which kind of really helps a lot of these startups because most of them really try to identify what the problem statement is and what the application is, which is where we really bring a deep expertise to the table.
Great. I'm really interested, Adam and Carly, because it sounded almost when we were chatting earlier that you had your corporate innovation arm or your fund went in opposite directions when it comes to how it evolved over time. And so I'm curious if you could sort of walk us through that evolution. And then Hemant, I'm curious which direction you align with more after hearing what Adam and Carly have to say.
Sure. Yeah, we can get started. Yeah. So we started, like I said, nearly 8 years ago, and maybe even just like zooming out and trying to tell a story about it. You can picture Liberty Mutual back then, a decade ago. I fully suited. I think I had a cummerbund on. I had a tie. I had everything. I was fully suited just to talk to like the person sitting next to me. The culture was different. It was like, let's go harder on innovation. Let's think about how we can get a more external perspective. Let's think about how we can have the space to incubate and test and take a more experimental mindset. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So we scooped up the team, tore off my suit, threw on my hoodie and my flips, went into co-working. And this is like 8 years ago. So we were one of the first large companies in the Boston area to go to co-working, to get outside of some of the norms and create culture, create new process, bring the talent in. We were working very independently. We were nearly a startup. We were nearly a startup, which felt really cool. It was like, this is awesome. But then you realize you're forgoing all of the capabilities and assets and talent that the Fortune 100 that you're attached to. So you're too far out. Like you're a satellite, remote outpost that, and I joke that we put it 20 minutes away from our home office because I predicted that an executive would not walk that far to come to that space because I truly wanted to have a protected space, to have a beachhead to get it started. But you're too far out. Like you don't have any connection to the business. You're not aligned. You don't build trust. So we started to slowly bring it in and integrate it, and there was many pivots along those 8 years. One of the largest things we did is truly move to a hub model. My team is very lean, and now we draw in resources and capabilities from across the enterprise. We rotate talent in. We actually sit within the home office now, and it took that time. I actually think you need to start with the independence and then move more closely, because I think if you start within, you get crushed, right? What I'll also say is we exist in different functions. So the innovation capability within Liberty actually started in a marketing function to begin with, and it was like, how can we talk about what we do differently, and how can we actually celebrate some of the things we already do that are innovative? And then we shifted over to our product organization because we realized to execute on some of the concepts we needed to garner the support and resources from these teams, and that was easier when you're co-located in a function. And the venture fund was actually founded in finance, so we were kind of stretching across from product to finance to join. And then what's exciting is just this past year, so 2023, after that journey of growing up in a business unit, kind of figuring things out, we were asked to expand to support the whole Liberty enterprise. So we actually then moved up to the corporate layer. So now we support all 3 of our business units in our corporate functions, and we actually report up into a chief of strategy who reports to the CEO. And what's powerful now is the chief of strategy is aligning the organization on where we should focus, what are the disruptive forces, where do we need to innovate, where we need to invest. And then she can look down to our teams, and she has incubation, right? We have academic partnerships housed there. We have the venture fund housed there. We actually have our internal strategy, corporate strategy and research development team there. So now you have all the levers right there that you can start to activate and pull more as a system, like I was saying before. But what's interesting is if you're here or out there on the stream and you're thinking like, oh, I want to do this in my organization, I'll say it's like you actually have to go through that journey. You have to find your way in the context of your business with the different leadership perspectives. And I wouldn't say doing what I'm doing now is exactly how you might start, but getting to that place, it's very, very powerful when you have these levers in one place and you start to orchestrate as a system. And it truly is about trust and alignment with your organization that will fuel innovation in a large corporate.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of things that Adam mentioned about the importance of having that strategic alignment. But that said, we did somewhat go in a completely different direction, although I think land in a very similar place in terms of how we're interacting with if you want to consider Suffolk Construction our affiliate company, how we engage with them. But for us, the journey to get there looked a little bit different. We started in the late 2010s, right at the onset of when different construction technologies were starting to come into the market and mature, investing on behalf of Suffolk Construction into some of these companies, brought in some folks who were experts in venture capital, who had spent their career in venture capital, paired it with folks on the operations side over at Suffolk who had an affinity for innovation, and started making a few investments just off the balance sheet. And so it was a little bit more of a traditional corporate venture capital arm. You could call it a proof of concept fund where we were testing the waters with actually investing in this space. It was still a time where now there's several VC firms that focus on the built world, but at the time there were not that many. And so in 2022 and into 2023, we decided, hey, there's actually something here. Some of these investments are really making their headway. They're gaining traction in the industry. We see a path to exit. There is something here. And so the team, and I'll fully admit this was before I joined the Suffolk Tech team about a year ago, so I have to give all of this credit to my colleagues, but the team went out and raised an external fund, and that's why we're an institutional LP-backed venture capital fund today. And a big reason for that is because we thought there was a lot of value in bringing in those external LPs. Some of them are strategics who operate in the broader architecture, engineering, construction, developer environment. And so we knew that they would be able to play roles that, Suffolk Construction can't necessarily play. Obviously Suffolk is very large in Boston. There are certain geographies across the country where they build, but we don't build every type of asset class either. So bringing in different general contractors who build in different places or build different types of buildings or like single family homes, knowing that there's a national housing shortage was something that we saw as really valuable and maybe something that we wouldn't have been able to do staying just under the umbrella of Suffolk Construction. So we raised an external fund. Something else that I didn't mention earlier is we run an annual accelerator program called the Boost program, where we work with a handful of built world startups. In that, we have 36 operating partners. who range from architecture and engineering firms to other general contractors to property owners and developers and managers, and then trade partners as well, which if you're familiar with the construction industry as well, on any construction job site, you'll have your general contractor who's kind of project managing everything, and then it could be hundreds of trade partners who are focusing on drywall or electric, and those are very small teams, but the power to actually work with those teams and introduce them to innovations that can help them do their jobs better, faster, cheaper is extremely powerful. So the intention for us was creating a little bit of separation so we have more flexibility to build those partnerships, and invest in startups that maybe weren't core to what Suffolk Construction does. Maybe they're not, their end user isn't the general contractor or the project manager. Maybe it's the foreman or the property owner, but we have those connections that we can bring them to the folks that we work with. So for us, it's been extremely valuable in that it's helped us broaden our industry expertise and the types of startups that we can invest in. But that said, it's still extremely important to us, to Adam's point, to keep that arm stretched. And we're on the same campus, but different buildings. So not quite a 20-minute walk, maybe a 5-minute walk. But in the winter, it's enough to give anyone pause to come over, to keep that arm and be able to ask for introductions or align with strategy, especially as we're thinking about things like AI and robotics, making sure that we have a pulse on our closest neighbors to say, is this something that you would actually use? Is this something that your clients or your trade partners you could see them adopting? So that's pretty central to what we do as well.
Your quick take, Aman.
Yeah, I think one thing we learned is you never take sides, but both of them really had great points. The only thing I would say is there's no one shirt which fits all, and there's no one framework. I would say understand what the innovation goals of the organization are. Second, most importantly, understand what the culture of the organization is, because management changes. All this happens quite frequently in most of the larger corporations, and as well as also understand what kind of ecosystem partners are you actually trying to look at, right? With all these three variables in place, I think you need to see what kind of an innovation organization do you need to build inside, because I've seen over the years it's a swinging pendulum where independent autonomy versus sitting under a BU, it's been moving back and forth. I don't think it's one answer. I think it's just trying to find that right balance for each organization.
Adam, did you want to add anything?
No, I completely agree. You gotta know the context, know leadership. You gotta pivot like infinite. Like it's constant pivoting. Like once you stop moving, you should just pack up and go, because what I've learned is you think you get the right model and the right setup, and then you gotta keep adapting because things change. So it's just constant resilience and change. And if you're out there and you like that, these types of jobs are probably for you. So.
I'm really curious too, and wondering if you can sort of bring up a use case from your experience around how corporate innovation strategies have really accelerated the success for the organizations that you work with. Adam, if you could kick us off.
Yeah, just like I'll talk about briefly one example that's pretty special. So it's all about alignment, right? So nearly 5 years ago, we held what we often do, a cross-functional research sprint. And really the goal there is you have a hunch about what the future holds, and some other people share that hunch with you, but the organization broadly doesn't believe it, or your leadership and stakeholders aren't quite there yet. And this was around some of our product lines that were traditionally sold by humans, solely by humans, moving into the digital direct channel. And it's just traditionally, it wasn't a thing, and it wasn't something that people were saying, hey, we need this right now. But we did that research, and you work cross-functionally, you involve everyone, and basically the goal of that is to align this large body on what the future might hold, and then take action on it. And what that led to is us kind of quietly incubating all of the capabilities that you would need to stand up this product line in a digital channel for the first time. And this is everything from how do you market it, how do you optimize the leads, how do you flow it in, how do you sell it, how do you bind it, how do you service it, how do you et cetera. So it's this thing that you're doing off to the side in this protected incubation space. And what's powerful about it is you're doing this in parallel with the core business, tackling the things that are critical for today. So you're not distracting, you're minimizing the distraction to the critical priorities, but you're also making progress to be ready for the future. So we did that over a number of years. And the real power is, like in at least in my experience in corporate life, many things are wanted within 12 month time horizons. Like once the year is over, it's like poof, like whatever, like it. But really, the hard stuff takes way more than 12 months, right? So you have people that are visionary out there, your stakeholders, that say, okay, I got it. We need this 5 years out. Let's go. Let's progress towards it. Let's have measures of success, et cetera. Then you have people that maybe don't take that mindset and they want things now. And what's powerful is, while you're incubating something for the future, right? We want that product line in the digital channel, performing well. If you bring back modular capabilities, you hear a lot about learnings and insights. Those are good because those inform strategy, de-risk investment at scale. But going beyond just insights, what I've learned is if you actually build modular things that can you send back into your core business as you're incubating, so actual like software components, things that make the traditional way of doing it better. One example is we have a capability that allows our customers to just free type in the description of their job, and then we'll match it to a risk class, which is complicated for a human to do. It's very complicated. So we did this because we know in the digital channel, we want to make it easy for the customer to do that without a human in place. But then we realized, wait a second, like this could augment the human's ability to do it in the traditional channel. So we take that capability and bring it back. And we have, I'll just do the one, we have multiple examples of leaving those breadcrumbs of value that can scale in your core business while you're still incubating. So you get into this like harmonious state of like moving towards the future and garnering support to keep incubating and experimenting and discovering, but you're also shooting out the value along the way. So even the folks that maybe lack that vision, they're getting something for their investment, and it works well. So that's the mode we work in, and that's really the impact we're able to have, is get that space prepared for the future, but also crank out the value now, and I think it's a nice rhythm to get into.
And Carly, I'd love to hear how it not only accelerates success for your company, but also for the founders that you work with.
Yeah, definitely. So one specific example is, robotics is a really hot topic in our industry right now due to acute labor shortages across the country, and it's an opportunity to really augment the workforce. And so a few years ago, we had a robotics company come through our accelerator program with a little bit more than an MVP, be able to iterate on that throughout the accelerator program with feedback from our project teams. This is a use case where the technology was meant for use by the general contractor or on an actual construction job site. So we're able to iterate on the product during that it was a 6-week accelerator program, gather feedback and go from a place where they were really just kind of testing the concept, seeing if this would work, to today it's been piloted and actually rolled out on multiple job sites for Suffolk Construction across the country. Our trade partners are starting to adopt it, and it's actually making a significant difference compared to a human actually doing the job. So it takes a little bit of time to get there, but I think the value that we bring, and that a lot of strategics with some type of an accelerator or venture arm will bring, is that willingness and ability to help you with early pilots before maybe you have a fully baked product, or the ability to show proven ROI. They want to be invested in your future growth, and so that's what we really try to do is help with that product feedback, help craft what they're working on for the specific industry. And so that's definitely a success story where today we're seeing cost savings, time savings on the job site, on the general contractor side. But for the company now, they have case studies, they have proof points, they can go out and sell to 100 more general contractors with the data that they've gathered and the improvements that they've been able to make on their product. And so that was truly a win-win in terms of increasing efficiency and productivity for Suffolk and our trade partners and our clients, who can maybe get projects turned over faster. But more importantly, for the founders that we invested in, that we took the bet on, who are now able to, because we, and I don't want to take all the credit because they are the ones that did the hard work of building the product. But being able to equip them with the right tools to actually grow and grow with confidence, knowing that their product works and makes a difference.
Trying to build on what Carly and Adam said, and again, going back to what Lonza does is we're trying to build technology platforms which accelerate the pace at which therapies can actually come to the market, as well as the clinic, at a very economical cost, right? With that in mind, a drug takes close to 11, 12 years to get to the market. Imagine the time it takes. And some of these technologies early on has a long TRL cycle to get to that endpoint. So the biggest question I think we always get is, what does value creation mean and what does value capture mean, right? These are very hard things at times to really show management that 5 years down the road, this technology is going to do wonders, right? So with that just disclaimer there, right? The way we bring value to startups is in multiple areas. First of all, working with the large strategic players also always bring that credibility to the table as a whole. And besides that, I think most startups are in the early stages are trying to define the problem statement and trying to define the application, right? Which is at times the hardest things to do, and they're trying to really understand. And this is where more strategics can really play a large role because they have tremendous experience, more than 50, 100 years of manufacturing experience, and you're trying to help them or assist them in that journey of clearly defining, hey, this is your focus area, this is your application. So that could really help them develop the technology in a much better way. But also, especially in the biopharma, access to some of those pilot and CGMP manufacturing facilities is not easy, though. So you understand how to design a system in a lab, but how do you really take it to a GMP environment ready for patients? It's an entirely different ballgame. And not a lot of founders have that kind of insights and experience. So, and that's where the larger biopharma players come into play, where they really can provide feedback on how to design a system for certain level of environments, though. So pilot programs and as well as validation of that technology. The other thing we also play a role is making sure that they have access to commercial partners, right? Because eventually it's a journey of 4 or 5 players coming together to bring a technology to the market, right? With that, having access to suppliers, because most big biopharma companies work with all these suppliers, so they do have established relationships. So the startups really get a chance to build on those relationships and look at if tomorrow the opportunity comes from mass industrialization, so they already have a partner in mind to actually have an exit strategy or actually think about partnering with them so they could actually take care of the supply chain part. We also at times sit on advisory boards trying to help them really go through that, navigate that journey as a whole. So that's the value the startups get. Lonza ourselves, I'm gonna give one specific case study. It is the partnering external innovation, corporate innovation group. I feel like the case study and where I feel like the biggest value for external innovation as a whole is transformative innovation, because trying to do that within an organization is very, very challenging. So one recent sponsored research with an academia project, what we're trying to do is we're actually looking at cell physiology as a function of the surrounding environment and the processes as a whole. As a part of that, we are actually testing multi-omics, which is basically your genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, all that data, and trying to do that kind of a project within one environment where you need transversal skills as well as cross-functional teams coming together is very, very difficult. That's where you see biggest value for the buck, where you could really go outside, find that partner, and actually find a way to economically and rapidly actually develop this platform so that we could bring that inside and actually help design better processes as a whole. Besides that, value creation for any kind of large organization is always that strategic filling those strategic innovation gaps, but also you're looking at a market landscape and you're always close to that market landscape. So these are some ways how value creation actually looks for both the startup and the large strategic player. Value capture, I think we'll have that discussion at a later time, yeah.
Haman, thank you for that. So I'm gonna bring something that comes up all the time when talking about corporate innovation. And then we'll actually turn to the audience for a few questions before we continue with some questions for our panelists. And the thing that comes up all the time is often, in mid to large size companies, I think a few of you have noted it already, there's sort of this pressure to see sort of near-term value, right? Or really speed some of those development efforts. But I think, a lot of times to see sustainable value and build trust with your stakeholders, that takes a lot of time. And so how do you all think about protecting early concepts and also R&D efforts while also creating structure for long-term innovation? Adam, if you want to start us off.
Well, I talked about that. I mean, it's kind of a flywheel effect that I think is very, very powerful in a corporate environment where you can create real tangible value, go beyond just learnings, because you'll realize the learnings and insights are great, but they're not enough to satisfy all of your stakeholders. It's just not enough. And you need these longer time horizons to get to where you're trying to get to, because anything anything worth doing is anything difficult and takes time, and it won't happen in a quarter or 3 quarters. So that the concept of kicking out modular value that can hit scale very quickly is like, I already said it, but that's one response to this. Another one is like, with things, you have these waves of emerging tech, and I think we're all, Gen AI is the one now, and there was some before, and in my career working with machine learning in the early 2000s, like before commercialization of some of the things, and you see it goes through hype cycles, it goes through winters, it wakes up again, some things persist, some things fade away. But if you think about my stakeholders, if you're executives at a Fortune 100 financial service company, you've likely seen these different cycles, so you're going to be skeptical, right? You're going to be skeptical of like, hey, like, trust me, this one's for real. Let me test with this one. That's not enough. So what we've learned is you can't build slides, you can't just write memos, you can't talk, you have to do. And the way we frame it is we have early stage sourcing and exploration on topics, and we try to pair some of these emerging technologies with actual business problems that are a critical priority to the business, but then hit it with like time box proof of concept development sprints. Like, it sounds basic, but if you can bring it to life with real data in situ, and make it real. Like, it's less about the technology and telling them why it's so awesome. It's more about showing them the positive impact it could have on your customer, or your client, or partner. And once you demo it and once you show it to them, in my experience, it like demystifies these things quite a bit, and it makes it much easier to garner the support you need to actually go into real development cycles. So I think the punchline there is that virtuous cycle I talked about is one, but the other one is really think about your audience and your stakeholders, and how can you bring to life the potential, right? So they can then share your vision and then go on the journey with you.
Amanth, how about you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Thank you, Adam. Right. I feel like this is a great place to have processes in place, right? Most organizations, management life cycle is 3 years, 5 years, right? Every time a new management comes in, they have a new vision, a new strategy. Within that, you're trying to complete all your work within the 2 to 3 year window as a whole. But these transformative technologies take that 5 to 7 to 8 years, and there's always push from that BUs to squeeze in that and just focus on the short-term value creation. So if you do not really have systematic discipline processes in place, it's going to really get difficult. I'll share my story in terms of what I'm trying to do in my organization is we segmented our innovation portfolio into 3 buckets. Our first one is called consolidate. The other one is called expand and improve, and the last one is transform. The idea is to have a certain portion of these innovation dollars as well as the pipeline fall into these buckets. We're looking at 30% consolidate, which is very much making small changes. Then expand and improve, have like 40 to 45%, and transformation actually look at 20 to 25 or even higher. It's not the case today, but that's just the goal, because there's always this push that expand the consolidate bucket and decrease everything else, because that's the easiest thing to do. Everyone can show value in a very faster time, right? So you need an absolute discipline in terms of like a proper deal flow process, and as well as a stage gate process to actually look at all these pipeline on a frequent basis, so that 1 or 2 stakeholders won't make that decision to actually kill off that project where it has potential, but it will take time though. Some of the things I'm also trying to incorporate is a lot of financial modeling, but that's the value capture part, where you really include a lot of that into the early stage business models. It's very difficult to create that because you're making so many assumptions on what's going to happen 7 years down the road. But even some hypothetical assumptions won't hurt. Trying to create those financial models attached to very early stage projects always really help. And stage gate process, which I mentioned, and some innovation shows promise. I'm letting some of those innovations sit at certain stage gates at a lot more, so they could really mature. And whenever they're ready, move them to the stage gate as a whole. The other thing I've done is exposing senior management to innovation on a quite frequent cycle. We conduct innovation days in different parts of the ecosystem, North America and Europe, and we have the entire LT, which is the N-1, attend all these sessions in this space, and also have executive sessions planned for these folks, so that they could actually see what the current state of our organization is and where the future state is. These things really, really help, because they realize that, yes, there's work to do, and at least realize that we need to spend energy on transformation. The last point I would like to add in terms of where my vision is in general, or the best practices is transformative innovation in general should be detached from your regular innovation cycles. It needs to get away from the business unit's profit and loss statements, and as well as it's right. It should be treated like its own capex, and that detachment is the way these things sustain. Like the incubators, skunk work, you need to find a way to get detached and isolated, but it's a porous isolation, not a complete isolation, because that's never going to work. So you need to find that bucket as a whole.
Adam, I see you shaking your head.
I like the porous isolation. I thought that was well said. Yeah.
And Adam, I've heard you talk too before about stage gating expectations, which I think is what Hemant is also talking about, and raising the bar over time. Anything else you would add on that? On how do you raise that bar over time?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, we have a very basic, kind of life cycles of sourcing, exploring, experimenting, and scaling, and obviously it's funnel, so it narrows, and we have a lot of freedom in the source. Really, that's like learning and being intellectually curious and immersing yourself in the business. And the exploration is where we do the rapid POCs that I referenced, where it's really scrappy. I mean, we're a big company, but we operate very scrappy. So we have small teams that can crank out these literally 2-week time box to bring it to life, and that's where we have more of a firm gate into experimentation, where you're actually drawing resources, you're drawing tech squads, you're pulling in, you're rotating in talent, and that gate is where we start to establish more firm measures of success. And you want to keep them, in an ideal world, you're going to tackle your most challenging value hypotheses first, right? But in terms of your expectation of how the thing performs out of the gates, you want to leave it a little more loose to start, but you want to show that you have rigor, you want to show that you have measures of success, you're working towards something, and then ratcheting those up over time. And that's tended to work with us pretty well. I mean, there's a misconception, I guess, on the outside that, innovation is shiny, it's cool. I think in a corporate environment, it's still cool, but it's difficult, and it requires resilience, and it requires rigor and measures, and you have to always be on it, because there's always skepticism in the investment in these things, where there's a million other things that the business needs today. So providing the space early days, and then having the rigor, demonstrating that, and then ratcheting it up along the way. And I think that applies probably more broadly to just corporate innovation, to also likely startup community, and demonstrating performance over time. So.
Really helpful. Did you have a last comment on that?
One comment,
Yeah, please.
right? Just innovation itself, I think, as Adam said, I think generally when we talk about innovation, we say new. I think the idea about innovation is more about a process, the process of creating, capturing, and isolating value. And it doesn't always need to be new. It's just being able to create that process within the ecosystem.
So we're going to see if there's any audience questions, and if there are, if you could also, when introducing your question, also introduce what part of the ecosystem you're a part of. So is it startup, investor, corporate strategist? That would be great.
Hi, thank you for this. Quite energizing. So your jobs sound really fun. My name's Chris. I'm the VP of Growth at a Vista Equity portfolio company, and we don't do any innovation. It's just about finding customers. So I love this conversation. My question, two quick questions. One is for Adam. Adam, this all sounds really expensive. The core job of insurance is just to have a ton of cash on hand. And so how do you account for that, or how does the business look at, at your quarterly earnings call? Is anyone asking about that? And the second question is, for each of you, how do you account for that flash of genius that comes from Carly, the iron worker, or Hemant, the cell biologist, who's sitting in line somewhere at a desk on floor 17, who has this idea, so that innovation is there, but how do you capture it, or do you?
Yeah, I can start. Well, of course, all of this, everything we're talking about requires investment, right? And it comes down to producing value, as we work through these things. And there's value in terms of tangible value, where it's new sources of revenue, or improving a customer experience, or retention, or in insurance, loss reduction, retention. There's all these metrics that majority of our programs are driving improvement in those. So we're actually contributing to the performance of the core business. Over the last 2 years, especially the insurance industry, there's been a lot of pressure and a lot of expense pressure, and we've shifted a lot of our attention into efficiency and effectiveness of current processes. To Hemant's point, it's not always about the new and the shiny. It's about how can you take the things we're doing and make them better and stronger. So as we contribute to those metrics improving, there's a realization that the investment in doing these things is good and the company will continue to do it. I'll also say that there's less tangible value of doing the things we're talking about in a corporate environment. There's cultural change. If anybody's part of a company that's existed for over 100 years, and there's longstanding norms, there's beliefs, there's kind of the old way and the old guard, and there's the future and the new way, and being experimental and being curious and providing the space for people to be creative and test. And that's what you get through this investment as well, more of a secondary, less tangible value point. But if you want your organization to be ready for the future, you have to shift culture, especially if you've been a longstanding company like ours. So there's a big cultural benefit, and I like to call it, it's less about, everybody's innovating. It's like everybody taking a more experimental mindset at looking at a problem, forming a set of hypotheses, testing them, and then pivoting and moving. And that's just not the norm at some of the larger companies. I also, just before we go to the second part of your question, I like to describe what you described as unlocking undeployed knowledge. So these types of innovation investments and programs, whether it's hackathons or innovation challenges or community things, they're critical because we're like a roughly 40,000 person organization, and there's people everywhere out there that have ideas, that have done their jobs and do them well, and look at something and say, I can do that better, but they may not have the right avenue to have a voice, or their manager might not be ready to give them that space. So we create, as part of our work in the investment in the work, that space to access that. And just over this year, we had a company-wide innovation challenge that was basically focused on how do we make our employees and our customers and clients' lives easier, better, and faster. And the amount of creativity that came through that just one event was a really beautiful thing. So.
Yeah, and maybe to take a stab at your second question as well, both from the internal innovation side at Suffolk, and then also how we scan for that and in the broader ecosystem is, I said general contractors don't typically do internal R&D. There was an estimator that was working at Suffolk, so they help estimate what the total cost of a building will be, who saw that this was being done in Excel spreadsheets and determined there has to be a better way. So they actually built a solution in-house that Suffolk ended up spinning out into its own startup that is now selling to other general contractors. So it's recognizing when there's a pain point that isn't being solved internally that maybe someone is like building a solution for, and putting your full set of beliefs behind that person and encouraging them, whether they want to scale it internally and just be an internal champion, or if they have the founder bug and want to spin it out, being fully supportive of that and seeing how you can capture value, both for us on the investment side, but also for Suffolk in terms of like the IP that was developed in-house. So that's one example of internally how we looked at that. Externally, a lot of what we do as a venture capital firm is screen thousands of companies per year. And what we look for is, especially we invest at the seed Series A stage, is, before maybe there's even a product, what's the founder's background? And oftentimes what we see is those founders with the deep domain expertise are solving a problem that they experienced firsthand. So maybe they were a mechanical engineer who, really had this manual process they did every day, that they automated, that they, connected with their friend who studied AI and brought them in and were able to build a solution. And so we look for those really great combinations of someone with deep domain expertise who understands the problem deeply, because that's often what we see is our partners and our customers are chopping at the bit to get their hands on. So we know there's a clear go-to-market motion for them, paired with someone who can actually build the product or someone who has founded a company before. And if they don't have that combination yet, we look at our network to see how can we introduce the right skill set. So not necessarily discounting the fact that maybe someone doesn't come from a tech background or that they haven't started a company before, saying, hey, yes, you have the perfect experience to build this because you've had this problem, and then how can we help?
Thank you. Those are really great questions on tough challenges as well, right? And I think I'll address the second one about internal innovation as a whole. Being an engineer, I always look at a process as a way to solve problems, right? So internal innovation, there's a lot of brilliant ideas from people because they're people with more than 15, 20 years of experience in the industry, and they always have an idea. We have internal innovation, right? When we say external innovation, I think our focus is not always on the external side, but we have a program running internal within the organization once or twice a year where we ask for ideas throughout the ecosystem, and then we collect those ideas, and there's a panel which looks at those ideas and eventually picks the top 1 or 2 ideas and funds those ideas. But the process still needs improvement and development. what's going on is after they get to that point of funding, there's not enough resources to support them to actually take them to the next stage. So at times they are falling out the cracks though. So the idea is in a way to think like an external entrepreneurship within the internal environment, like entrepreneurship, right? Can we create a process where not only funding, but resources and time given to those founding teams so they could really go off and do this work on the side and not really get bothered by anything else, which is really hard because you're really taking away from their day jobs to do it. And eventually, is there a path towards incubation where they actually can set up a company within this environment as a whole, right? But all that need definitely is a culture and this certain will required to do that, right? And the first question is innovation dollars are always hard. We get hacked. If anything is going on in the organization, the markets are bad, our budgets disappear the first, right? So I have no shame begging and borrowing, right? I'm used to it, but we are trying to find innovative ways to see where we could actually increase that dollar amount so that we'll have a lot more freedom to do this work.
You're innovating your budget.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Thank you. So my name is Mark Zheng, and I'm working some AI-related project at the same time try to build a community under the a name called Boston AI Forum. The question I actually have is actually like Hamid and Alicia sit together, so that give me a perfect context to ask a question related to biotech, pharmaceutical, like in terms of from the corporate side, when you need to find a new project, new research that have commercial potential, in terms of looking at how you source, how you identify those, from a process standpoint, like currently look at your process, what's your pain point? Is there some way that can help you better? And from Elisa's standpoint, I think like Dana-Farber, each year there's a lot of great projects try to commercialize. And from also from your perspective, when you're looking at try to find out commercial partner, is that process that you find that will help you bring the awareness, exposure to outside commercial partner like Hamid? And I just want to find out the kind of connection. Thanks.
Great question.
Yeah, I will say that I actually don't work on the research side of Dana-Farber. I very much sit on the business side and collaborate with a lot of our clinical experts who provide care. But I will say the process that we follow to find clinical partners absolutely does support our mission in a way. A lot of the time when we're commercializing new products or services, it may be based on clinical expertise that hasn't necessarily been codified into intellectual property yet, but sometimes there is existing intellectual property. And so finding commercial partners, sometimes those become development partners or co-development partners, and sometimes those partners are really necessary in terms of how we can actually get this expertise out of the four walls of Dana-Farber to more patients. So we definitely look for clinical partners in most of our deals that we do around the clinical care side. It's not necessarily just licensing some intellectual property and then, thank you very much. It's definitely staying on with those partners to continue building and advising from a clinical care aspect.
Thank you. Again, I'll be happy to talk to you later on the AI and ML, generative AI. Generative AI, besides being the buzzword right now, it's everywhere. Digital transformation is a big conversation in every organization, and there are multiple pilots going on within different parts of the Lonza's larger corporate unit in terms of what can we do, what does value creation look like, going back to what does capture look like, because enterprise level changes are really hard, so you need to make sure that some of these technology platforms actually make sense before you start looking at them. But we are very much invested into this space. We are both on the West Coast, East Coast in North America, also all the universities in Europe really are looking into all these tools, especially predictive models, which is what we need in terms of our work, right? As well as deep machine learning knowledge, deep learning knowledge. It's something it's hard to build with an organization because you're competing against the bigger organizations with bigger paychecks trying to hire these people. So you need to find ways to partner to actually bring this space. But there'll be a point where I feel like we will be at a crossroads where you might need to start thinking of building internal teams. But more to your question, we are very much entrenched into this ecosystem, trying to find partners, especially within the next 3 to 5 years, to build tools which could really enable not only the scientific part, but also the corporate part in terms of doing better finance, or like co-pilots of the world, all these aspects. So there are pilots going all in all kinds of environments, and we are invested into academia and startups and all these different spaces to really look at them. We're really looking at a lot of companies in this space.
Thank you all for your nuggets of wisdom. Can you speak to people in the audience who may be interested in a shift to corporate innovation? How can they get there? What skills are necessary? And secondly, what gaps do you need filled, or what seems like the most compelling thing for you in your organizations to make you more innovative?
Yeah. And I'll add on that. I'm actually curious too if this is where you all thought your career would go. And so if you could talk a little bit about, your process in terms of how you got to where you are, I think that would be really helpful to impart on the audience as well.
Yeah, so I mentioned I started out with deep passion for technology. I sort of grew up in the 80s, it's like Stranger Things minus the monsters. So I worked at an arcade. I was very good at Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. I still am. I don't know how I bridged to my career from there, but deeply passionate. Thought I was going to go that road. That was more a hobby and a passion. I did take a very defensive posture when I did play those games. So I then went to defense tech. So that's a big jump. I tried to stretch it there. So I did defense tech for nearly 15 years. And what was really cool about that is I found my way in. I was surrounded by nearly all PhDs. We were doing, edge research and development for some of the hardest problems over the course of 15 years. And it just trained me. I didn't even realize it. I thought the whole world was like this, because that's all I knew from internship to the day I walked into Liberty Mutual, is you chip away at really hard problems incrementally, and you need resilience. So you never solve the first time, you never solve the second time, you make 10% progress, 5% progress. You chip away at it, and that progress gets the funding and gets the momentum to keep going. And that's sort of how I was trained by my mentors and the people I worked with in that defense arena. And then fast forward to where I am at Liberty, the connection to me for that was the passion around helping people complete their mission safely. So like in insurance, it's about financial transfer of risk, and I believe even beyond the protection we provide, we can actually move more to prevention and actually help people proactively drive down risks in their lives, be safer. That's actually good for society, good for them, good for our business. It's very virtuous. And then in order to be successful, the question around what do we need, resilience is one of the top things, because you are chipping away at hard problems, and some of those problems aren't just the products and services. It's the context, the environment, the different stakeholders, different perspectives. It's very complicated to navigate, and if you're not resilient, you'll just keep getting knocked down, and you'll just pack up, go home, and you have to keep getting back up, have to keep going. And as you do that, you'll get stronger and stronger. The other thing I'll say is collaboration, alignment, and trust. You have to just work in the best interest of the organization that you're working for. You can't have your own agenda. You can't try to build fiefdoms. You have to truly be aligned and be serving the business to the best things you can for your customers and clients. And there's going to be days when we're incubating something that you would be holding on to because it's yours and you believe in it. Sometimes you're going to have to let go and move with the current in order to make the organization successful. So I'd say that's a little bit of my journey. So from the arcades on the North Shore of Boston to defense tech to insurance and corporate innovation. And I think if anybody wants to learn more after this or online, reach out and I can share a little bit more about the journey. So.
Carly, how about you? And also any resources or programs that you would recommend for people who are interested in corporate innovation?
Yeah, definitely. So funnily enough, Ellis asked us last night when we were all chatting what we wanted to be when we grow up, and for me, it changed every day and ranged everywhere from an ice cream person to a senator. And so I think over, in all of those changes, what I realized about myself is, I'm a people person. I'm a connector. I love connecting people with other people and challenges that they want to solve, and sitting at that crux, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to a specific job description that was super obvious. I studied marketing and entrepreneurship in college with the hopes that I would land somewhere that I enjoyed. And I did. I did sales and business development for a little while for startups, got an MBA with a focus on sustainability and innovation. And that's where I really fell in love with venture capital. And kind of going from the startup side to working with a lot of different startups and helping them solve problems and connecting them to the right people that could help their startups grow. So it was by no means a linear path, and I don't think saying the words corporate innovation ever left my mouth when I was growing up among ice cream person and senator. So, but I'm so happy with where I am. It's an extremely rewarding career, I would say. It's also, I'm relatively new to this world. I started with Suffolk Technologies about a year ago. My job was posted on LinkedIn. I happened to have a connection to the team, so that was definitely a benefit. But I think what was also unique is with the team that I'm on, a lot of the folks come from the construction world, from the built environment, have that domain expertise. And for my role specifically as a community manager, they were looking for someone, obviously they wouldn't say no to someone with that expertise, but they wanted someone that knew about partnerships and community and sales and business development and how to create an operationalized system for the startups that we were working with. So a lot of the roles that we've hired for since I joined or before I joined were not necessarily publicly posted. So it can go either way. But I would say for me, networking was a really big way in terms of how I broke into this industry. Right before this job, I was working at an early stage clean tech accelerator. So in the sustainability space, which there's a huge overlap with the built world. So it was quite serendipitous that I ended up where I am today. And so that's a really big skill, I would say, for anyone looking to break into corporate innovation, is being able to build your personal and professional network, both for yourself as you're looking to pivot and go into these types of roles, but also because you're trying to build coalitions around innovation or introduce entrepreneurs to other people. Building that muscle for me is the biggest asset that I have, because the more people I know, the more I can think, oh, hey, you're building this product. I was talking with so-and-so at this general contractor the other day who's trying to solve this exact problem. Let me make that introduction. And that's how, these webs are woven. These are how people get connections. So that's a muscle that I've really worked on building up. Also just happened to align with my personal interests, but that's a bit about my story.
And I know we're over time, so really appreciate everyone staying on for a minute. Hemant is gonna.
Let's try again. I don't want to keep anyone. It's especially a Friday, right? So just trying to, I don't think I woke up one day thinking that I want to be a corporate innovation guy, right? So healthcare is where my passions lie, and bringing affordable therapies to market is what I really enjoy doing, and that's the space. So I chased problem statements more than the jobs itself. I wanted to work on being a scientist, being a chemical engineer. What can I do to rapidly bring drugs to market? After that, I realized the technology space was not that great. Then I moved to the technology space to see how can I rapidly commercialize technology. Then this role accidentally happened in terms of both aspects of looking at the therapies, but also looking at technologies, which gets the therapy in the market. Right? So, but I enjoy the role right now. It really, it gives you a different perspective, and hopefully see what the next journey is, right? And the last thing, I think the most important part is how do people get into corporate innovation? I would say it's LinkedIn is a great way to look at it and reach out to people. They say network. At times that could be difficult, but if you have any connections on LinkedIn, instead of cold contacts, look for warm connections. That really helps. Just ask for informational interviews more than a job itself, so that you could really understand the field, talk about problem statements, and you enjoy that discussion. Automatically, people get attracted to that. Also, there are forums like Cambridge Innovation Center in Cambridge, which has a venture cafe every Thursday from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. That's where you meet these people. There are also a venture and incubator accelerate networking sessions, as well as conferences around that. But those things are pretty expensive. I'll stay away from them unless you have that kind of capital. But focus on freer sessions, meet people, and also focus on the problem statements.
All right, thank you all for your input. Unfortunately, we are at time. Once again, thank you. Quick round of applause, please. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to come here. Our closing party is at 5 p.m. tonight. I highly suggest being there. The next panel in this room is Venture Capital, the rocket fuel to billions or bust. If that is your event, please stay here. If it is not, the folks at the registration desk can help you out. And lastly, we have our amazing photographer, Kevin Tai. If you want your photos, you can scan the QR code here, and you can get your personalized photo album. Thank you.